And we are live. Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers live podcast. My name is Lance Sanderson. I am your host as always, and joining me as usual is my good friend and colleague. He is your Denver Broncos insider and Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst. He is Erick Trickel. Erick, what's going on, man? How we doing today?
We're doing pretty good. Just outside of the constant banging and stuff, unfortunately, the people below us in my apartment complex were evicted. And so now they're having to do a whole bunch of remodeling, turning up the carpet and stuff like that. So if you guys hear any banging in the background while I'm talking, that's what it is. Sorry, I asked them if they wouldn't mind stopping. They said no. They have to get it done by Monday and all this stuff like that. So they're working on that downstairs. They've been working on that way late into the night, so it's making me even more tired than I already am. And it's just a bummer, but at least we don't have to deal with dogs barking throughout the night like we were.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it sucks that we are going to have to deal with the banging, but it is what it is, guys. We do apologize for that. Unfortunately, there's just nothing we're going to be able to do about that. Now, before we get going here, guys, I do want to remind you all to follow us both on Twitter. You can follow me at Sanderson MHH and for Erick at Erick Trickel, excuse me. And we do actually have now a new Twitter account for the show at DVDD_pod. So make sure you guys are following that as well for any more updates that we have on the show. Also, if you guys get a chance, go over to the Apple Podcast and just give us a quick review on the Apple Podcasts. Excuse me. And, 5-star review and just review the show. It helps us get out to more viewers and everything like that. So, but anyways, guys, today we kind of promoted this on our Twitter handles and everything like that we're going to do a live mock draft. We're going to use the StreamYard feature that we have, and we have the Draft Network has their mock draft machine, and I love using it. Erick likes to use it. Nick, Carl, all the guys. We see a bunch of mock drafts on Twitter and everything like that all the time, and it's a lot of fun to use. It's good to to kind of get to know the prospects. They do have some scouting reports and everything like that you can click on. It's very interactive, and it's just a lot of fun. And for today's episode, we're going to use your guys' comments and everything on the live stream. We're going to pull your comments, and we're going to let you guys be the general manager. We're going to let you be John Elway. We're going to be the scouts, and we're going to let you guys make the picks, really. But so to kind of get us going as a quick rundown about how this is going to go, because we are kind of limited as far as time today, we're going to do a 7-minute discussion in the first round, and we have the first round already ran. The Broncos are going to be on the clock at number 15 overall here in just a few minutes, but 7 minutes for the first round to kind of debate who we want to kind of see the Broncos go with. And we're going to let you guys be the voice and make the pick. Then after that, we're going to go into the second and third round. We're going to do a 5-minute timer and then 3 minutes for the 4th through the 7th to kind of wrap things up. We'll do a quick breakdown of everything and just kind of get going. Now, I'm going to move us over here so you guys can see what we've got going on. And right now, the Denver Broncos are on the clock, and going through the top 14 picks. You have obviously Joe Burrow to the Cincinnati Bengals, Chase Young to the Redskins, Jeffrey Okudah to the Lions, Jedrick Wills, a kind of a surprise pick to me, to the New York Giants, Tua Tagovailoa, Christian Fulton to the Chargers, Derek Brown to the Carolina Panthers. That's a pretty common pick right now. Tristan Wirfs is going to the Arizona Cardinals, DeAndre Swift, the running back out of Georgia, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mekhi Becton, the athletic freak athlete from Louisville at offensive tackle, going to the Browns. Jerry Jeudy goes to the New York Jets. Isaiah Simmons, linebacker, the really kind of do-it-all threat for a defensive player, goes to the Raiders, which would be very unfortunate. I would hate to see that. CeeDee Lamb to the Colts, and then Justin Herbert, the quarterback, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Erick, this is going to leave us going here with A.J. Epinesa, K'Lavon Chaisson, Javon Kinlaw, Andrew Thomas, and Henry Ruggs III as far as the top 5 players on the board. Now, I asked you this question just briefly before we got going. If you were John Elway in this kind of a situation, where would you go? I mean, now everybody is kind of pounding the table as far as what we're seeing as far as getting Henry Ruggs into this offense. The Broncos definitely need some speed, but I mean, I know you've heard some stuff coming out of Dove Valley. So what do you think of, one of these defensive players?
The way I would lean if I was John Elway in this scenario happened to pan out, I agree that with one of the comments that Christian Fulton and DeAndre Swift, I don't think that they will go top 10, but I definitely in this situation, it would definitely be Javon Kinlaw the way that I would go. There's been a lot of word going around that there's people inside the Broncos organization that are already pounding the table for Javon Kinlaw, with basically the whole factor of being that he is just a dominant athletic freak on the defensive line that with the proper coaching, which Bill Kohler is one of the best defensive line coaches in the NFL, that he can just absolutely be just a deadly force for the Broncos defense, especially with Bradley Chubb and Von Miller on the outside and being placed inside the scheme that Vic Fangio runs. It'd be a tremendous fit, a tremendous piece going forward. And that's the way that I would go with it.
Yeah, and and I kind of agree with that. And it's something that you had kind of said to us in our group chat with Nick and Carl, was that the Broncos do value the speed, and they think that they definitely need to address the speed at the wide receiver position. But this is such a deep draft at the wide receiver position that you can find a speed threat later. I mean, you can get somebody like that, J.D. Spielman out of Nebraska, to take the top off of the defense. You can get someone like Denzel Mims that can go deep and be that kind of a deep threat guy. But there is not another Javon Kinlaw, and he's the freak athlete in this class. Like, there's a big possibility here that if Kinlaw is on the board, and I mean, Nick Kendall has been pretty in touch with everything that's been going on as far as what was happening up at the Senior Bowl, and he did kind of say that the rumors leaking out of the Senior Bowl was that Tampa Bay was really looking at Javon Kinlaw as well. But I don't think that there's any way that you can pass on Kinlaw at 15 if he's still available. Now, we're getting some comments coming in, guys, and we do really appreciate everything that you have. And obviously, there's the guy, Henry Ruggs, all day with that speed is deadly. And if he runs a 4.2 40, you can't pass up on that. Now, with Ruggs, as far as how that is supposed to kind of turn out, it's going to be really interesting to see if he does run a 4.2 40. Do you think that he's going to last to, the 10th overall pick even?
If he runs a 4.2 40, I think he has a definite chance to be the first wide receiver taken. That kind of speed is deadly. It's something that can it's hard to defend against. I mean, we saw it with Chris Johnson. Even though he was a running back, teams struggled to defend against him because of the speed that he brought to the table. And Henry Ruggs at receiver, that's going to be even more dangerous, especially if teams give him a cushion. I have plenty of concerns for him as to why he sits a little bit lower on my board, and why I wouldn't go with him at 15. It's just his route running, I don't think, is all that great. I think that it definitely needs a lot of work. And the biggest issue is that there's no speed variation in his routes, and that's something that can help getting a quicker separation. Although with his speed, it's not a huge deal because, I mean, he could just outrun everybody. In the NFL, though, coverages are going to help cover up for that a little bit. So it's kind of like a back and forth with him and his route running. But yeah, if he runs sub 4.25, I don't see him going past 10. I'm not saying that the Browns will take him, but I think that at the very least, the team will trade up into the top 10 and get him, if not a team already there.
And we kind of addressed this last week. Now, what do you think about the Broncos moving up to go get him if he does run something like that? If John Elway's enamored with the guy, do you think that he would be willing to pull the trigger on a potential trade? The Broncos do have a projected 12 draft picks this year, so they got some ammo. If they want to go up and get a guy, they definitely can. Do you think that John Elway would do so if he fell in love with Ruggs and he did run like a 4.25 or a 4.2, something like that?
I think it'll all come down to the cost of what it would take to move up, because John Elway, he is kind of stingy when it comes to giving up picks. He doesn't want to give up too much, and I can see that being the case with Henry Ruggs, just because it's such a deep receiver class. I think that adds even more to the fact that he's not going to want to give up too much for it. No matter how fast he runs, there's plenty of other speed options in this receiver class. I mean, granted, not all of them are going to run 4.25 or 4.2 in the 40 time, so there's definitely plenty of other options for it.
Yeah, there is. Now, we're seeing a lot of these comments coming in. Juan Arguello on YouTube saying Andrew Thomas. Now, Andrew Thomas is a guy that, about a month ago or so, he was projected to be like a top 5 pick. People were saying that he was the top offensive tackle in the draft class. Now, over the last month or so, especially with the rise of Mekhi Becton out of Louisville, and just the way that the draft is always constantly changing. It's such a fluid situation here. But with Andrew Thomas, he seems to be falling down some boards. Now, Eric, what do you think of Andrew Thomas? Would he be a guy that the Broncos would be potentially looking at number 15 overall?
I think that he's definitely an option for the Broncos. I've spoken to quite a few people that have mentioned that they feel that he might be a little bit better on the inside at guard than outside at tackle, although he is said to have pretty good length, so that's going to help out. But he just has issues with speed on the outside. So putting him on the inside where he can use his power a little bit more effectively is definitely an option. And I could see the Broncos going that route, because I think the versatility on the offensive line, especially if they're going with an offensive tackle round 1, is going to be key here. That's why Tristan Wirfs is so high up, in my opinion, on their board, is because he has the potential to play inside year 1, because let's face it, they're likely going to roll with Garrett Bowles. I mean, after his play after week 10, after the bye week, was was tremendous. I mean, outside of the penalties, he gave up, I think, like the second fewest pressures overall. And so you get a guy like Andrew Thomas or Tristan Wirfs, you can play them at right guard, moving out to right tackle if when Juwan James gets hurt, and then after this year, if they move on from Garrett Bowles, there you go. You have your left tackle replacement right there.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Now, guys, we only got 2 minutes left on the clock, so we're going to kind of move away from the discussion here, and we need to see as many people commenting as we can because we got to make a pick here. Now, if it's me and I don't know. It's really hard. I really do like AJ Epinesa. I know Nick does as well, and the Javon Kinlaw of the world, and just the information that we have that you had just given us with Javon Kinlaw being highly spoken of in Dove Valley. It really kind of makes me want to lean that way. Now, I do also fall in line with the speed at the wide receiver position, and I do think that Henry Ruggs is a very, very big possibility for the Broncos here. Now, Eric, what do you think?
I think that the best way to go, honestly, is Javon Kinlaw, in my opinion, simply because that I know Henry Ruggs' speed is hard to pass up on, but you can go get speed later. We don't know what receivers are going to fall to the second round, but you can definitely look there. But again, you guys are being the general managers. We're just being the scouting department. I'm seeing a lot of Henry Ruggses out there. I mean, quite a few Jerry Jeudy's, but Jerry Jeudy isn't available. And so it's up to you guys. I mean, whatever you guys want to pick, voice your opinions. We're your scouting department. You guys are the general managers. So seeing a lot of Ruggs. So I think that's probably going to be the way that it's going to go.
I'm fairly certain that that's pretty much the way that we're going to go with Jeudy being the constant mention there. I think that it's just going to be too hard to argue with everybody in Broncos country. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to take Henry Ruggs III, the wide receiver out of Alabama, in the first round. Now, this is kind of an interesting situation as we watch this kind of go and watch everything unfold here. We'll go back to me and Eric really fast. It's with Ruggs, again, just the ability to take the top off of the defense is a really good compliment to Courtland Sutton. They need another guy that can, get open early in the down. And I think that with Ruggs and the elite speed that he has, it's probably a really good pick to make right there. Now, that takes one big need off the Broncos roster for at least in the first round. Now, going into the second round, there was an interesting question posed, and we kind of talked about it just a little bit. You've got Henry Ruggs, and now if there's a possibility that you can get another wide receiver in the second round, Jalen Reagor maybe, I don't necessarily think that that's a good idea because I think that you need to get somebody that can open up over the middle of the field and work just a little bit better. Eric, what do you think? Would pairing another wide receiver in the second round be a good idea for the Broncos, or?
It obviously depends on what type of receiver it is, because when you're building a receiver core, and I'm actually doing an article on this basically not as we speak because I'm not doing it live, but after this, I'm going to be working on an article that's talking about the complementary skill sets that are needed at the wide receiver position, because you can't win with just one or two types of receivers. You need multiple types of players that can sit there and do different things for it. And all the high-powered, prolific passing offenses over the last 10, 15 years, and even longer than that, have had those multi-dimensional, or not multi-dimensional, but those very, very versatile, varying skill sets to be basically effective to take advantage of every aspect of the field. The speed guy to take advantage of the deep, the yards after the catch guy to take up those underneath catches, and that basically the intermediate guy who can go and make those contested catches, challenge on the boundary, things like that. I mean, we saw it with the Denver Broncos in 2013. We saw it with the Atlanta Falcons with Roddy White and Jones. Julio Jones. And we just saw it with everybody, like all these different offenses. So it's definitely like it all depends on who's there. But if it's complementary skill set, then yeah, I'm all for getting another receiver in round 2. Yeah,
and I'm kind of not really sure as far as that goes. I think that it's just so deep of a class. And I did see there was a comment that just came through. Let me go grab that really fast. It said, now, in the second round at the moment, we need a cornerback. We don't know if we can get Chris Harris Jr. back. So knowing that we must get the top corner available at that pick. So I kind of agree with that. We need to not necessarily double down on the list of needs. We're going to go back through this. We got to kind of move forward just a little bit. So the last 5 guys taken before the Broncos: Antoine Winfield Sr., the safety, or junior, excuse me, the safety out of Minnesota. Jeff Gladney, there's a pick that I know that kind of stings Eric just a little bit. Matt Hennessy, the interior offensive lineman. Jake Fromm, the quarterback from Georgia, and Raekwon Davis out of Alabama. Top guys available. KJ Hamler, wide receiver, Jalen Rieger, wide receiver, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back out of LSU, Noah Benajane, I believe is how you say his name, out of Auburn. It would be the top cornerback available. The wide receivers just seem to be falling in this class, and there's a pretty decent. Well, excuse me, I'm a little far down here. Now you've got Josh Jones, Julian Okwara, the edge out of Notre Dame, Austin Jackson out of USC. And with the Broncos needing some help on the offensive line, you got a couple of really decent guys right there that seem to be position versatile, I think, with Josh Jones out of Houston. Eric, what do you think?
I definitely like Josh Jones. I think he is just a tackle only at the NFL level, but Denver has to improve their depth there. With the whole corner thing, I don't think that you have to go early at corner, especially with the scheme. They're just not super relied on. They're not very, I don't want to say they're not valuable, because they are. It's just a different kind of value for them. And then wide receivers, looking at those wide receivers there, a lot of them bring kind of the similar skill set that you have with Henry Ruggs. So they're speedy guys that can get open. So I'm kind of leaning away from that. I'm looking at the offensive line, and Josh Jones in particular. I don't expect him to be there come the actual draft, but this is a guy that if he is there, man, you got to go. You got to go that way.
Yeah, and it seems to be the consensus as I'm looking through the comment stream here. I mean, Josh Jones is getting a lot of mentions right now. That's 4 or 5 in a row that I've just seen. Now, I do agree with that, and just with the wide receivers, like we just got done discussing, with Jalen Rieger being available, we've already got Henry Ruggs in tow. I think that's probably just going to be the best way to go. And I don't know if there's any other people that think that we need to stop and pause, and if we can go back to the players that are available here. I mean, we can scroll down a little bit as well. I mean, Austin Jackson's a pretty decent piece as far as an offensive tackle goes. Curtis Weaver, an edge out of Boise State. Zach Bond, the edge out of Wisconsin. Donovan Peoples-Jones, Lucas Niang, AJ Terrell. I mean, there's some other players here available as well. So,
but just throw it in as our colleague Nick Kendall says, the offensive tackle drop off after the first 2 rounds is super hard. So at this point, I don't expect Josh Jones to be at this pick even. I'm not expecting Lucas Niang to be there. I'm not expecting any of these other top tackles to fall much farther to the 3rd round pick. So you got to go Josh Jones here.
Yeah, and so far with everybody that we're seeing, we're just, you know what, we're going to do that. We'll just scroll right back up to the top there, and we're gonna go with Josh Jones, the offensive tackle out of Houston, versatile guy that can play. And like you kind of broken down at the beginning with Andrew Thomas, Garrett Bowles with the improvement he had last year. Obviously, you've got Juwan James and the injury concerns there. Need a right guard potentially with Ronald Leary on the way out. I mean, Josh Jones can play that right guard position. I think he could play it at a fairly decent level. So, are you not so sold on that?
As I said earlier, I think Josh Jones is a tackle only at the NFL. He's not a guy that you want to push inside, and I think that he has good power, but he's a guy that I'm leaving at tackle. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to develop him to be a tackle. If Juwan James goes hurt, then Josh Jones can get inserted at right tackle, and then reevaluate going forward, because Juwan James, if I remember correctly, his contract isn't super hard to get out of after this next season. So if he's having some bad medicals there and he's getting hurt again, then you can just move on and move forward with Garrett Bowles if the Broncos decide to keep him back, because I don't expect them to pick up his 5th-year option. So there's plenty of options going forward with the selection of Josh Jones. Granted, you don't really want to go depth with this pick in the 2nd round. It's a premium pick, but it's value that you can't pass up.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And Ben Stewart comes in on YouTube with a pretty decent question. How is Josh Jones's medicals?
I haven't heard much on that.
Okay. Now, going back to the simulator here, we're going to kind of move this forward just a little bit. We're in the first pick for the Broncos in the 3rd round pick, number 77 overall. Going back over the last 5 guys that have been taken, you've got Hunter Bryant, the Washington tight end, Thaddeus Moss, the tight end out of LSU, back-to-back tight ends in the 3rd round, Natane Moody, interior offensive line out of Fresno State, Bryson Hopkins, tight end out of Purdue, Matthew Pert, the offensive tackle out of UConn. Guys that are available, you've got. We'll just go right up to the very top here if I can. And I've got Cole Kmet, the tight end out of Notre Dame, Jalen Johnson out of Utah, Denzel Mims, a wide receiver out of Baylor. Now, is that potentially a good mix right there? You get Denzel Mims and Henry Ruggs, and that could be the guy that you need to have to kind of be that multi-dimensional speed threat for the Broncos offense?
I definitely like Denzel Mims here. I mean, he's got decent speed to stretch the field. He's a former track guy. But this last year, he's definitely shown more as a route runner on the short and intermediate. He definitely has good speed to break away on underneath catches. He's able to make people miss. He's can be kind of physical, though he's not the most physical receiver there is. So he's definitely a guy that I would be looking hard at here. KJ Hill, I mean, he's a guy not quite this early, maybe with the next pick I would be looking at if we don't take a receiver here. Lucky Fotu, he's definitely an option here as well. Go get a big nose tackle that the Broncos can need to improve their interior because, let's face it, Mike Purcell, as good as he was as a run defender, he was very lackluster as a pass rusher, and the Broncos need a guy who can offer a little bit more there to help out those edge rushers. So, I mean, and there's a comment here too about Von Miller and his age getting up there and looking for a pass rusher to replace him, and that's something that Denver could possibly be looking at doing at some point in this draft. I'm not sure I would do it this early though. I'd probably be looking somewhere day 3, but that's definitely an option here. With how the things have fallen, I'm definitely looking at Denzel Mims the most, though.
Yeah, and it looks like Nick Kendall. Nick is on here watching on Periscope. He says Jalen Johnson or Denzel Mims for this pick, and I mean, there's a lot of good value here. And I was kind of scrolling through and just taking a look at who else is available, and I did kind of run across one guy, and maybe he's not going to be able to fall to the Broncos' next pick in the 3rd round. What do you think of Troy Dye, the linebacker out of Oregon here?
I definitely really like him. He's a guy who can come in and upgrade the Broncos linebacker core because they need to have a guy who can be a little bit better in coverage and more consistent. Alexander Johnson, he's not the most reliable guy there. He's definitely a downhill guy want to go up against the run and reading the play and making plays there. Todd Davis, I mean, he started out well in coverage, but then teams just found out ways to exploit him. So you want a guy who can basically offer that a little bit more. There are guys I like a little bit later to bring that coverage ability to the Broncos defense than Troy Dye, but he's definitely a good option at this point.
Yeah. Now, Jeremy Shawn coming in on YouTube, he says cornerback is a major need here with Jalen Johnson available out of Utah. I was scrolling down through and I saw Cameron Dantzler is still available. What do you think if you were going to go with a cornerback here, which of the two would you prefer?
I'd be going with Jalen Johnson. I think that he's a pretty underrated corner. I've been going back watching over his tape because, as our colleague says, Daniel Jeremiah has him as number 3 cornerback, and I know I'm quite a bit lower than that on him. So I've been going back and rewatching him, and he is a dog. I mean, he's very physical. He's a guy that just brings that physical presence to the secondary that the Broncos, I mean, they like to have in it. But with the number of corners there, with Cameron Dantzler there and couple other corners that I saw when you were scrolling through, then I would definitely be looking at waiting for a little bit. Go get Denzel Mims here, in my opinion, and then maybe Jalen Johnson because we're up again here. The Broncos are up again here in a few picks. Maybe you can go get Jalen Johnson then.
All right, now we got one quick question here with Brian Greenfield on YouTube coming in on a super chat with a $2 donation. Thank you, Brian. We appreciate you. When do you think we're going to get a defensive back in the draft? Now, we're kind of struggling with that right now. We've got we're going to have to make this pick. Now, Eric thinks that we should probably go with Denzel Mims. I think that, Jalen Johnson here would be a pretty decent idea. But again, as Eric said, you go get Mims here and you wait and see what falls to you in the next couple of picks. So guys, what do you think? We've got about 20 seconds here. Are we going to go with Denzel Mims or are we going to try to find a cornerback for Vic Fangio's defense?
While people are voicing their opinions, there is one question that I want to take in. We only need one type of receiver, a burner with track speed. We have plenty of other wide receivers on the roster already. This is from Big G Host off of YouTube. While you're not exactly incorrect, the Broncos definitely do need a little bit more out of the receiver core. Tim Patrick is very similar to what Courtland Sutton brings. And as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the 15th overall pick with Henry Ruggs, is you got to have complementary skill sets. Tim Patrick, he's not a complementary skill set to what Courtland Sutton brings. Deshaun Hamilton, he's a good route runner, but he's not overly dynamic after the catch. And in this scheme especially, you want somebody who can be dynamic after the catch. And we got Henry Ruggs, he's that speed. And you want to properly utilize spacing, you need a guy who can sit there and take those shorter passes, but offers more than just that. And that's one big reason why I'm pounding the table for Denzel Mims here.
Yeah, well, it looks like everybody else in the GM room is definitely going against you. Everyone's saying, let's go Johnson here. Johnson again. Cornerback is more of a need than wide receiver. Cornerback.
My big issue here is that corner just isn't a valued position in the Broncos defensive scheme. I mean, we see it time and time again with Vic Fangio. He takes basically overused veteran corners and revitalizes the career. I don't see the need for it in this thing at this pick. I would definitely be go get that wide receiver and then get the corner in the next pick. But who knows? Maybe Denzel Mims can fall to the next one.
Yeah, let's hope so, because we're going to take Jalen Johnson, the cornerback out of Utah, as what the fans have voted. So as this moves forward just a little bit, I kind of agree with you. Now another thing. Let's see if I can find it. I saw one. Here's a good comment from a David Robbins on Facebook. Parnell Motley would be a great defensive back to take later in the draft. Now, Eric, I don't know much about Parnell Motley. You are obviously the senior NFL draft analyst for Mile High Huddle. What do you think of Parnell Motley and what he can bring to this Broncos defense?
I definitely like his fit in the Broncos scheme. He's a guy that does well when reading the play and does well playing off coverage. He's a guy that I'd be looking at somewhere around 4 to come in and make a play and basically compete for the Broncos' number 2 job with potentially Prince Amukamara, who the Chicago Bears are rumored to be cut. I wouldn't be surprised if Denver goes that way, which is another reason why I wasn't really pounding the table for a corner early. But there's a lot of corners that I think that would be great in the Broncos scheme to be had later on, and with how devalued the position is, that you didn't need to take one. So round 4 is where I see Parnell Motley going at the earliest, and that's about where I'd be looking at taking a corner for the Broncos.
Okay. Now we're going to get back to the mock draft here, and the Broncos are on the clock at pick number 83. And going back over the last 5 picks, you have Leki Fotu, who went immediately after the Broncos took Jalen Johnson. Cameron Dantzler immediately right after that. Your boy Nick Harris from Washington, the interior offensive line. You call him the best interior offensive lineman in the class. Kavon Wallace, the safety out of Clemson. Man, the Raiders are having a really good draft, it looks like to me. Darnay Holmes, the cornerback out of UCLA, goes at number 82 overall. And look who's sitting there at number 70, or excuse me, number 83 overall. You have your boy Denzel Mims, the wide receiver out of Baylor. Now going down the list just a little bit, Jabari Zuniga, the edge out of Florida, another quality player. Troy Dye still on the board. KJ Hill, Eno Benjamin, a kind of a do-it-all running back, needs a little bit more work as a receiver, I believe. Malik Harrison, linebacker out of Ohio State. You can get another linebacker that's. I think that you had said that he was fairly decent in coverage for the Vic Fangio. So. Where do you think you're going to go here, Eric?
Well, Denzel Mims. That's the way that I think that you have to go. And as our colleague says, Denzel Mims, send it in. If it would pop
I got you.
There it is. Denzel Mims, send it in. You have to here. I would have gone with him with the last pick. I wouldn't be betting on him falling for it. It's, again, wide receiver is much more important for the Broncos scheme, especially with Pat Shurmur bringing in 11 personnel. I understand that a lot of people believe in Tim Patrick and Deshaun Hamilton, but it's just complementing skill sets. They don't have complementing skill sets that fit with what the Broncos want under Pat Shurmur. So I would have gone here. Thankfully, he fell. Send it in now. We may as well, because all the comments are Mims.
Yeah, everybody. David Cromwell, a good friend of ours, a friend of the show, a friend of everybody at Mile High Huddle. He's constantly in everybody's direct messages and asking all kinds of questions, especially on Twitter. Giggity, he says. But he says you can get a guy like Devon Hamilton for the defensive line later. Van Jefferson, there's another good pick there as well. Nick Kendall, here we go. Sutton, Ruggs, Mims, Hamilton, Giggity. Absolutely. Now, I think that's kind of just the direction we're going to have to go with this. Denzel Mims is just too attractive. We passed on him the first time. We're gonna go ahead and just take Denzel Mims right here and kind of move this forward just a little bit. Now, interior offensive line. Let's talk about that really fast. We did go with Josh Jones, the depth player at the offensive tackle position. The interior of the offensive line is kind of a deeper position, especially in rounds 3 to 5. You would say, is this a potential area for the Broncos to kind of look at a guy that can fill in and fill that right guard position, and possibly also at center, seeing that Connor McGovern could be leaving in free agency?
This is definitely where I'd start looking at an interior offensive lineman for the Broncos. This is the range where I actually have if I remember correctly, most of the interior offensive linemen graded, or the most, I should say, is about this range. But I'd also be looking at defensive line. We've kind of been pushing it off. We didn't get Javon Kinlaw in the first round. I'd be looking at a guy here, depending on who's available. Linebacker, that's another good position that I'd be looking at right here. And then even running back as well. So those are the positions that I'd be looking at the most here.
Yeah, and that's fair. What kind of running backs would you potentially be looking at here? Just off the top of your head, not knowing what we have as far as the running backs available.
I don't know. That's a little bit difficult because we don't know who's going to fall. It's just a little bit rough at this point because maybe the guys that are available aren't the best fits for what the Broncos need from the running back position. And there's some guys that can fit later. So it's hard to say without knowing who would be there.
Okay, well, let's just answer that question right now. We can filter this out. This is one of the greatest things about the Draft Network mock machine, we can filter out positions. So we're going to go and we're going to filter out just the running backs that are available. And at the top of the list, Anthony McFarland, running back out of Maryland, Keyshawn Vaughn, a guy that I know that you're very high on out of Vanderbilt, LaMichael P. Ryan, Patrick Taylor Jr. out of Memphis. There's just a couple of guys. Now, the Broncos are on the clock again with their third round pick, number 96 overall. And just to go back to see who we've got Malik Harrison, the linebacker out of Ohio State to the Browns, Michael Ojemudia, the cornerback from Iowa. Nick's going to kill me for saying his name wrong. I guarantee you that. Evan Weaver, linebacker out of California. Darrell Taylor, the edge out of Tennessee. Eno Benjamin, a guy that I really like out of Arizona State. Logan Stenberg, interior offensive line out of Kentucky. So getting rid of all the running backs here. Maybe if I can, here we go. Jabari Zuniga, the edge out of Florida, still available. KJ Hill, Van Jefferson. I think we're going to pass away from the wide receiver talent. Now, here's a guy right here, Ben Barch, the offensive tackle out of St. John's, who really helped his stock. Eric, speak on Ben Barch just a little bit, the work that he did at the Senior Bowl the week before, excuse me.
He's definitely a guy he played tackle in college, but he's going to be moving inside at guard. He would be a really good scheme fit for what the Broncos want to run. He's got good mobility to go and do those outside zone stuff that the Broncos want to do. And he's going to be able to go and basically have some power up front to basically push people around. I like his fit in the scheme. And this is, right here, I'd be strongly considering it. Going back and looking at the running backs, you said I'm a big fan of Keyshawn Vaughn. I was in the Broncos' old scheme. I really liked his fit in it. This one, not so much. He's not the toughest of runners between the tackles. I like his vision and his patience to take it outside a little bit more. But, if you're looking at running back, then LaMichael Perine, this is probably a guy that I'd be looking at here. He's tough between the tackles. His vision isn't the best, but you don't need vision as much to run between the tackles in this new Broncos scheme. So definitely a guy I'd be looking at here, but I think that the way I would be leaning personally is Ben Barch, going to get a guy who can go play that right guard spot for the Broncos.
Coming in on the super chat here, Lance Blunt with a $5 donation. Thank you, Lance. I do appreciate that name. I like your name as well. I think that's a pretty good name. But he says, I feel like getting a center or a tackle who can play inside is essential. Should Denver address part of this issue? I think Bowles can move inside. Now, looking through who the players that were available, there is actually one center that let me get back over to the mock draft itself here. Number 104 of it overall on TDN's predictive board, Tyler Biotish, the interior offensive lineman out of Wisconsin. He's been falling and plummeting down draft boards, especially with the stuff that he did over this last year in 2019. And right below Lance's question is the comment there, Tyler Biotish, center. What do you think?
I'm not a big fan of Tyler Biotish. This is still early for me, in my opinion, on him. I have him, I think, with a round 4 grade, maybe round 5. I don't think that there's much room for more development in him. I think he's close to being maxed out as to what he is. He is good at what he is, but he just had a really down year. And so I have a lot of concerns with him overall. And it's nothing personal against Tyler Biotish. It's just, I think that there are other centers better that can be had other than him. That especially fit the scheme a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay. Now Terry coming in with a $5 donation. Thank you, Terry. We appreciate all your support, guys. Kyle C. Yates coming in on YouTube says, I agree, but the wide receiver wealth is deep in this draft. What about the defense? While a few good picks are still available, I feel we can get a flyer with later picks at the wide receiver. Now that's actually kind of an interesting take on this whole situation with the wide receivers that we have taken in Mims and Ruggs. We did pass over a lot of defensive talent, especially with Javon Kinlaw. Now, kind of going through some of the comments here, interior offensive line is another one. Leary's on his way out. This is definitely a place that we probably should be looking at the interior of the offensive line. So we'll just go and if I can actually find that. Well, you know what? Never mind. Damian Lewis, LSU, interior offensive line. Just go through the Akeem Davis-Gaither, a guy that I know that you're very high on, still available here. What about a linebacker for this Vic Fangio scheme?
This is definitely a point that I think that Akeem Davis-Gaither would be great value for the Broncos, but there's still other linebackers I like. This is definitely, I said it before, this is where I'd be looking at interior offensive line. And if you want to pull up the interior offensive line real quick, I'll go and run over a couple other guys except for Ben Barch that could be good fits for the Broncos.
I'm trying to find it here, and it's not.
You're gonna have to scroll down. It'll be under offensive tackle.
Okay, gotcha.
So, going back and seeing a couple other questions on that we have coming in. let's see here. Somebody asked about moving bulls inside the guard, and I definitely agree with Nick here that he doesn't have the anchor nor the hand fighting to hang inside. His hands have been a big issue with him at tackle, and when you move inside the guard, your hand fighting is going to be even more important. And I just don't think that Garrett Bowles has what it is to do that. And then you add in the fact that he doesn't have an anchor. He really struggling of dropping his butt and stopping defensive linemen, which is another big part of what you want on the interior offensive line. So I don't see that Garrett Bowles is a good guy to put on the inside.
That's fair. And now we're going to come back here. I actually got it figured out here. I do apologize for that, guys. Here's your offensive line rankings right here. You've got Tyler Biotish as the top guy. Damian Lewis, obviously, out of LSU. Shane Lemieux, offensive lineman out of Oregon, a guy that I think is probably going to be a fairly decent fit here. Oops, we're scrolling a little too fast. Ben Bredesen, a guy out of Michigan. Michael Onwenu is available here. I know that you're very high on Onwenu, a big body guy that can still move. John Simpson out of Clemson. What do you think, man?
I would sit there and I would be looking at Damian Lewis or Michael Onwenu. I mean, both guys are guys that you can go in and plug at right guard right away. Both have really good mobility. They've got plenty of power. They've got all of what it takes. I mean, they do struggle a little bit at times with speed guys on the inside, but we're putting in a smart center, which definitely the Broncos do need. That I'd be looking at those guys. You want a little bit more power on your right side at right guard, especially with potentially a constant change going on at right tackle with Jawan James and his health. I'd be looking at one of those two, but we are seeing a lot of Tyler Biotishes, and I think that's the way that we're going to have to go because we are running a little bit long.
Yeah, we are running a little bit long. It's time the Broncos actually have now had their pick expire by like 3 minutes now. So I do apologize about that, guys. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to pull back up the mock really fast, let you guys see this. We're going to take Tyler Biotish, the interior offensive lineman out of Wisconsin here, and let this move forward. Now, we got another guy coming in on the super chat. Your boy DJ, he says, this live mock is a game changer. Thank you, dudes. We appreciate you, man, with the $10 donation. We do really appreciate that. Now, with what do we got here? We've got Ruggs, we've got Josh Jones, we've got Denzel Mims, and we've got, excuse me, let me go back into this and we can go and take a look at our picks. Jalen Johnson, Tyler Biotish. The needs that the Broncos have, we're kind of getting them filled here, but there's one big glaring need, and that's that linebacker position, man. What do you think? Where are we going to go here? Inside linebacker is probably got to be the next pick that we're going to be taking a look at, yeah?
I would be looking at basically linebacker and interior defensive line. If you want to pull up the interior defensive lineman real quick, I'm sure there's plenty of guys here that I'm going to be able to go break down and offer my take on them. Sitting there right at the top, my guy, Davon Hamilton. He's the guy that I think would be a tremendous fit. I mean, you're missing out on Javon Kinlaw. He's a guy who basically is not a carbon copy of Akeem Hicks, but he can play that role in this Vic Fangio defense, that big nose tackle. He's 320-plus pounds, very quick, can shoot the gaps, can anchor. The only issue is making him be a little bit more consistent. And that's something that's going to have Bill Kohler's going to have his work cut out for him. And I think inside the Vic Fangio defense, he's going to be tremendous for the Broncos here.
Yeah, what about Tyler Clark out of Georgia?
I'm not the biggest fan of him. There's other guys basically available. I mean, even McTelvin Agim, I think it's actually said, is a guy that I'd be looking at taking over Tyler Clark. Benito Jones, he's another guy that I'd be looking at taking over Tyler Clark. Tyler Clark is a guy that I'm very low on. I think he's around 6 or 7. Can't remember off the top of my head, but just not a guy that I'm a big fan of here.
Okay. So we've got the interior defensive lineman looked up, and I know this is about the same kind of area. I look at right there at your linebacker position. Akeem Davis Gaither is still right there at the top of the list. Marcus Bailey, linebacker out of Purdue. Kamal Martin. This is an area that I think that my boy, Mr. Logan Wilson, could go if he's not already gone. We don't know without going all the way through. I could look him up. But, I mean, linebacker seems to be another need here. Eric, what do you think?
I definitely agree that you can go and basically look at a linebacker here. I mean, linebacker or interior defensive line, those are the two positions I'm looking at. And Akeem Davis Gaither, he's a guy that I really like in the Broncos scheme, guy that can go cover. He's kind of like a poor man's Isaiah Simmons, basically. I mean, he's been moved all around that defense for Appalachian State and just doing all sorts of different things. He's played in the corner. He's played in the on the edge. He's played off ball. He's played safety. He's played everywhere on that defense. And he's a guy that you can come in, or he can come in and take away tight ends and running backs and just be a tremendous fit.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to go back over here. We're going to take a look at some of the value that's still available on the board here. We've got, obviously, Ben Barch is still available. Sadiq Charles, the offensive tackle at LSU. Anthony McFarland, running back out of Maryland. Just some of the guys up at the top of the list here. Akeem Davis-Gaither, Alton Robinson, the edge from Syracuse. Trey Adams, offensive tackle out of Washington. So, guys, we're going to need your input here. Who do you think? Do we need to go and get that linebacker, or do we need to kind of hang out here and just and see if we can't find an interior defensive lineman?
Basically, my advice would be either Akeem Davis-Gaither or Davon Hamilton. Make sure you guys are voicing your opinions. Talking about a couple of the other options that are available. Ben Barch, if we didn't go get Tyler Biotish at the last pick, at this point, I would definitely be going and just pounding the table for him at this point. Sadiq Charles out of LSU, he's a guy who played tackle for them, but he's going to be moving inside to guard at the NFL level. I mean, he's just basically his whole skill set is an NFL guard skill set. Anthony McFarland, he's definitely, if you want to look at a running back at this point, he's definitely a name to be keeping an eye on. He didn't have the best of years, but he's still plenty of potential there. So looks like that our last few comments have been about Akeem Davis-Gaither. So lock it in and let's keep it rolling.
All right, we'll do that. Akeem Davis-Gaither, linebacker out of Appalachian State, another chess piece for this Vic Fangio defense. Now, we're going to have to kind of move this forward just a little bit, guys. We're going to be running a little bit long. So if there's anybody out there that has that's watching that has a specific draft crush, let's bring it in here. And we got a guy in here that says, Devon Hamilton sounds pretty good. There's a guy. Now, Eric, I want your just specific. What is the one biggest draft crush that you have in the later rounds?
In the later rounds?
Yeah. About this area where we're at right now.
Man. See, I think Davon Hamilton will end up going round 2 or 3, teams like those big athletic guys that can go and just make big plays. And so, I don't know. I think I really like Cameron Brown out of Penn State. He's a guy. He's another one of those. He's a super poor man version of Isaiah Simmons. Moved all over the place, done all sorts of things for the Penn State defense, and just a huge option. And we did get a super chat here. Thank you for the donation. Is this chat based on the roster excluding free agents? Yes, it's kind of hard at this point to kind of do it. I mean, with me anyways, I'm kind of factoring in things that I think that the Broncos will do. One reason why I was so low on cornerback earlier is because of the expectation that the Broncos will go land Prince Amukamara if he is let go. So kind of factoring a little bit both, but for the most part, it's excluding free agents.
Yeah.
And then real quick, there's another comment. Richie Grant didn't declare for the NFL draft. He's returning back to school.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now we're going to get back over here to the mock draft simulator. The Broncos are on the clock at pick 128. You've got Tyler Johnson, Richie Grant, Michael Pittman Jr., Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt here, Devin Duvernay, the wide receiver out of Texas, Ben Bredesen still on the board at the interior offensive line out of Michigan, Jeremy Chin, a safety that had a very huge Senior Bowl, really helped his stock, a small school kind of guy out of Southern Illinois, Trajan Bandy, a cornerback out of Miami, sitting there, Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame. Eric, here's your boy once again, number 141 overall, Devon Hamilton. Do you think we need to go and snatch that guy up right now?
I would definitely be looking at him right at this point. I mean, I don't think he would be here come the actual draft, as I said just a few minutes ago. Teams love those big athletic guys that can go and cause all sorts of havoc on the defensive line, especially with some coaching. I mean, they don't care if they're raw or inconsistent or whatever. They're going to bet on themselves to go and make them into something. So at this point, I mean, I would have gone with him at the last pick. I mean, but at this point, I mean, this is the way I got to go. And Lance, can you check something for me? Do they have punters on the TDN? Do they have specialists anyways on it at this point? Because
I'm not sure. Hold on here just a second.
Because at this point, all right. This is the point where I would be looking at taking specialists for the Broncos. I mean, a punter, they definitely have to fix that going forward. I mean, because I was kind of harsh on him last year prior to the season, but Colby Wadman, he's not that good. I mean, he showed potential, but he was just so inconsistent that you can't rely on him. So if they had it, this is definitely a point where I would be looking at taking a punter. So.
Yeah, that's fair. And you're referencing this comment here from Bawana Beast, the punter from Texas A&M. Speak just a little bit about him. I'm not sure. I don't follow punters and specialists and stuff like that. Obviously, that not necessarily a lot of people do. But if you know anything about that punter from Texas A&M, his name escapes me. I have no idea who.
Brandon Mann.
Okay.
And he's got a good leg. I mean, putting him in the Mile High Air, I mean, he's expected to have a really big one. The guy that I would be looking at, though, if I'm taking a punter is, I want to say his name is John Charlton, or Joseph Charlton out of South Carolina. He's a kicker, or he's listed as a kicker, but he's a punter who has a huge leg. I think he was, unless I'm getting him mixed up with Mann. One of them averaged like 50 yards per average on a punt. I can't remember which one it is. But if I'm looking at a punter, they're definitely there. And just so you know, Lance, that we can pull up punters. You just have to type in their names.
Okay, so let's do that really fast. Nope. Never mind.
By the names.
It's all right. We'll just skip that for right now, guys. I do apologize. I'm still trying to figure this whole thing out. So Lance coming back and says, "How the heck is Michael Pittman still available?" It's a deep wide receiver draft, man. Like there's just all kinds of talent. Now we're gonna go back over to the simulator here, and what do you think? We've got Trevon Hill, the edge out of Miami. Alohi Gilman, safety is kind of a sneaky need with his Broncos team with Will Parks and Justin Simmons potentially hitting free agency. I don't know, Eric. What do you think here, man? Or do you want to just scroll on down and scoop up your boy, that Devon Hamilton out of Ohio State, pair him back up with his former teammate and Draymond Jones?
This is where I'd be looking at Davon Hamilton, but it's up to you guys. You guys are the general manager, we're just scouting department. I've seen a couple comments about Antonio Gibson. And if we didn't already take Denzel Mims and Henry Ruggs, I'd be talking about Antonio Gibson at this point. He's a running back receiver, can just make people miss and just be super effective at that. But I don't know if he's actually still available at this point. I mean, if you want to pull up running backs and look for it, we can. But this is one guy at this point that I would be looking at. But after what the Broncos have already done at receiver, I wouldn't be going that way. I'd be looking at Davon Hamilton at this point.
And Antonio Gibson is still available, folks. So, if you're really pounding the table for that kind of dual threat running back, wide receiver kind of a guy, he still is available here. Now, I think that you're right. We did kind of go and talk about Devon Hamilton. So I think let's just do that. Everyone's kind of slowing down just a little bit. So we got to get this moving forward just a little bit, guys. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take Devon Hamilton out of Ohio State, that interior defensive lineman. Now, let's see here. Let's go see if we can't get some more of these comments. And Ben Stewart on YouTube comes out and says Devin Duvernay would have been a great pick there. Let's see here. Oh, here's a good question for you. How about Braden Mann, the punter from South Carolina, with a 6th round pick? Punters are on the Draft Network now. You just got to scroll down a little bit.
Yeah, we actually didn't know that. We actually discovered that just a few minutes ago. I actually think that both those punters would be going in the 5th round, just because they're both very capable punters. So, I mean, with this pick, yeah, I'd be looking at one of those punters. I mean, Brandon Mann or Joseph Charlton, either one of them, man, just perfectly fine with me. You got to upgrade Colby Wadman, plain and simple.
Yeah. All right, now Broncos back on the clock at pick number 161. Just taking a look down here at the last 5 picks that we have. Michael Onwenu, your guy out of Michigan, just went to the Tennessee Titans. Tyler Clark, interior defensive lineman from Georgia, to the Packers. Brian Edwards, wide receiver from South Carolina, to the Chiefs. Jonah Jackson to the San Francisco 49ers. Tommy Kramer, interior offensive lineman from Notre Dame, to the Bengals. And the top guys available for the Broncos here, you've got Chase Claypool, Isaiah Hodgins, wide receivers, J.R. Reed, the safety out of Georgia, Jacob Phillips, the linebacker out of LSU, LaMichael Pirine, running back out of Florida, Terrell Burgess, Antoine Brooks Jr. out of Maryland. There's a lot of talent here, and it's going to kind of line up with the Broncos' needs. The safeties are available. There's a running back available. What do you think, man?
At this point, I'd be looking at running back. I'd be looking at safety, although I do expect Justin Simmons back. Who knows with Will Parks? If Will Parks comes back, then safety can definitely get pushed down. As I mentioned earlier, punters I'd be looking at and considering at this point. But I think that the one name that stands out for me is LaMichael Pirine at this point. I think that with the scheme change, he can definitely bring that toughness between the tackles and just offer up just that complementary piece to Phillip Lindsay that the Broncos need from the running back position.
Yeah, I saw a comment up just a little ways about Antoine Brooks Jr., the safety out of Maryland. Is he a scheme fit for this Broncos defense? Does he fit kind of what Vic Fangio wants out of his safeties?
Sorry, who was that?
Antoine Brooks Jr., excuse me.
He definitely is. He's a guy that can move around a little bit and just be kind of that chess piece. He's a guy that, Kareem Jackson, we had that comment a little bit earlier about Kareem Jackson being 32 years old and grooming Kyle Duggar at the time was the player that the comment said to take over for him. And I think at this point you could be looking at Antoine Brooks. I don't think he's a super gifted athlete, which is fine for Vic Fangio. He's a guy that can come in, be that number 3 safety, work on getting developed, and just move around to kind of like they do with Kareem Jackson.
Yeah. So we're seeing a couple of comments rolling in here. Tony Sahatjan, if I've mispronounced your name, I do apologize. He's saying go get Antonio Brooks. What do you think? Is that the way that we need to go here?
I wouldn't be opposed to it. And he also says running backs are interchangeable. Why do you guys always focus on offense only first? Well, part of it was the question earlier about if we are factoring in free agency, and a little bit, as I said, a little bit I am. And I think that the Broncos are going to be looking a little bit more at free agents on the defensive side of the ball and trying to go and building young on their offense around Drew Lock, which is why I'm focusing a little bit more on offense. But we've taken plenty of defensive players. We went and got Jalen Johnson in the 3rd round. We went and got Akeem Davis-Gaither. We got Davon Hamilton. We've added key pieces on the defensive side of the ball. It's continuing to go and get those pieces that you still need on the offensive side of the ball. The Broncos need to go find a running back that can be tough. And at this day and age, and at least at this point in the draft, there's not that many guys who are going to go be that big physical guy between the tackles not even tough physical guy, a tough runner between the tackles. So you want to go get that because you need to find that complementary piece to Phillip Lindsay to just help out the offense, which is a very young offense, so that you're going to have mistakes, but you still got to keep building that offense.
All right, now just to kind of move this conversation forward, we're getting just a little bit long, guys, so we're going to have to move this along quickly. You've already said LaMichael Pirine out of Florida, and we've got guys pounding the table here for Brooks Jr. out of Maryland. Let's see what take one more comment. Let's just say the next comment that has a name on it, that's where we're going to go. So I think that, in my opinion, I think we need to go in just with Will Parks and Justin Simmons. You don't really know. I think that safety is probably going to be.
We know what Justin Simmons will be back in a Broncos uniform at the very least via a franchise tag.
Okay, so is this the running back pick? You think?
I think that Brooks is the one that's winning out. I mean, we had a couple comments for Jacob Phillips, but Jacob Phillips, I mean, he plays that linebacker position. We already took Akeem Davis-Gaither, and I don't think that you want to take another linebacker at this point. I mean, I like Jacob Phillips. I like his potential, and if we didn't take Akeem Davis-Gaither, this is a guy that I'd be looking at here. But it would between LaMichael Pirine and Antoine Brooks, either of those guys are fine with me. Okay.
Well, I think we're going to go with Antoine Brooks Jr. here. I think that's just, to build up the safety depth. We were getting grilled a little bit as far, that's just the way that the conversation was going here. And just to kind of keep this conversation moving, I do agree with you. There is a definite need with this Broncos team as far as a legitimate runner that can run, not necessarily just in between the tackles, but a guy that can be a better receiver on the outside. Just Phillip Lindsay hasn't been able to do it. And Royce Freeman, I thought that he was actually pretty good last year and did show the ability to go catch the football at least decently. And I really liked when they put him on the outside and made him run the quick slant passes. But a true legitimate running back that can catch the ball out of the backfield is probably a bigger need than people are giving credit for, especially in this Pat Shurmur offense.
It is. I mean, you want that guy who can be tough between the tackles because that's a big part of the Pat Shurmur scheme. And Phillip Lindsay, as good as he is, he kind of struggles a little bit there. Royce Freeman, he doesn't have the burst to be effective between the tackles all that often. And you are right that he was really good as a receiver. He was the best receiving running back the Broncos had last year. He ran good routes. I absolutely loved his play when he was kicked out at wide receiver. I think that's something that we should continue doing going forward. And one reason why I don't think that the Broncos should be moving on from him. So that's definitely one reason there, but you still got to have that tough guy between the tackles, and that's why I've been pounding the table for running back and mentioned it a couple times. I think that, while I don't think that going Antoine Brooks was a bad thing, I think that you want to fill out that offense with young talent.
Yeah, and it's just time to build build the nest around Drew Lock. I mean, you got to give him some more weapons. And with the wide receivers we've got here, we've got a really obviously the probably the fastest wide receiver, probably the fastest player in the draft in Henry Ruggs. You've got Denzel Mims to help across the middle. Now it's kind of time to go look at that running back class. And I'm going to just narrow it down here for us because if you go through the Broncos are on the clock now at pick number 214. And the top of the list here, you've got wide receiver. We've already added to the wide receiver class. There's not a whole lot really to work with as far as the running backs. We're going to narrow this down just a little bit. We're going to take a look specifically at the running backs, and we're going to find a guy here that is going to be, that kind of wide receiver threat or a receiving threat better here. So top of the list here, Rico Dowdle out of South Carolina, Michael Warren II out of Cincinnati, Reggie Corbin out of Illinois, James Robinson, Illinois State, J.J. Taylor, running back, Arizona, and a guy that you were really kind of slapping me in the face for last week, or a couple weeks ago, as far as saying that the running back position in the draft this year is not quite as deep. Here he is, JaMychal Hasty, who had himself a pretty decent day at the Senior Bowl.
He did. He did have a fumble, but he's tough. He's patient. And he can be physical as well. I mean, he showed that he can work in space. He has a little bit of everything in his toolbox, which is why I'm so high on him. And I really like his fit with the Broncos at this point. Well, he is tough between the tackles. He's not the toughest guy between the tackles. So it's kind of rough here. But I mean, DJ Dallas, he's a good one that I think that at this point would be a very underrated pick. James Robinson, I don't think that he would be here at this point. Very effective in space, catching the ball, running the ball. You just want him basically you want him to get him in space. Joshua Kelly, he's another guy who's had a very strong game. I think that was the Senior Bowl, running between the tackles. I mean, very patient. He made people miss and basically in a phone booth and just took off for it. And then there was also another guy in Adrian Killens who at this Shrine game had a very strong game there. And he's another guy who showed he can be effective in space, but he's also pretty solid and tough between the tackles.
Yeah. Going back to the super chat here, Brian Greenfield coming in with a $5 donation. Thank you, Brian. We appreciate it. Do you think this draft players will be as good as last year's for the Broncos? I don't know. And with the I'm not necessarily sure about what your question is here, but as far as just evaluating over the last couple of drafts that the Broncos have had, John Elway has done a very good job over the last couple of drafts. Obviously, getting a guy like Cortland Sutton, Philip Lindsay coming in after the fact, Bradley Chubb, just taking kind of the value that's there. As far as the players this year, I don't know. With Ruggs and the deep wide receiver class, I don't think that there's really any kind of way that the Broncos can miss out on the talent there. But at the same time, I mean, what do you think, Eric? Do you think that the players in this draft class are going to be and have kind of the same kind of an impact for the Broncos as the last couple draft classes have had?
It's hard to say because we just don't know who's going to be there. We don't know how they're going to fall or anything like that. So I think that the Broncos, if they definitely hope that they do. I'll say that. And before we continue on with this, I just want to say, since the news just broke, congratulations to Steve Atwater. He's finally in the Hall of Fame.
Hey, yes, absolutely. You know what? That's probably the best thing that I've heard all day. It's long overdue. I'm glad that you just said that. That's I mean, we've been pounding the table in Broncos country to get more players into the Hall of Fame, and just to be able to see one of my favorite players growing up of all time. I wanted to play safety. I wanted to play wide receiver because of Steve Atwater and Rod Smith. I mean, those were two of my favorite players growing up. So congratulations to big number 27, man. The silent assassin, man. The smiling assassin. He's just, that is what it is. Now, we got to wrap this up here, guys, so we're going to have to go back. I did see, here we go, Bawana Beast coming in with a comment here, Joshua Kelly. What do you think, Eric? Is this a guy that could fit with what the Broncos want to do?
He definitely is. I mean, he's tough between the tackles. He can make people miss. He's good in space. I mean, he just has that good wide range of skill sets. I mean, his receiving ability hasn't been really hashed out. He definitely flashed potential there. Just wasn't used there a lot. And this is also a point. If he's still there, I'm looking at Joseph Charlton. I don't think that come the actual draft, he would be there. But yeah, man, Joseph Charlton, he's got huge leg that can be even more of a weapon in Denver.
Yeah. Paul coming in with the super chat here. He says, "Can I have wide receiver, and running back in the top 3 picks?" And I've been pounding the table for Jake Fromm, the quarterback out of Georgia, just to give it to Nick. A little shot at Nick. Thanks, Paul. We appreciate you, man. Big friend of the show. He comments on the YouTube channel all the time. It's absolutely amazing. But now, here we go, Kelly. There it is. I think that's probably going to have to be the way that we're going
to have to go. Yeah.
Yep, that's the way that we're going to have to go. So we're going to go. Let me pull this back up and get us back onto the mock draft so everybody can see, and we'll get this kind of finalized up here, guys, because we are getting just a little bit long. We're going to have to get moving on here. So Joshua Kelly to the Denver Broncos, pick number 214 overall. Now let's go and once this finally finishes itself out, we'll go and take a look at everything that we've got and go into our picks. Once again, Henry Ruggs III, the wide receiver out of Alabama. Josh Jones, offensive tackle out of Houston. Jalen Johnson, cornerback out of Utah. Denzel Mims, wide receiver that we've passed on at number 77, still managed to get him at number 83 out of Baylor. Number 96, Tyler Biotish, interior offensive line out of Wisconsin. Akeem Davis-Gaither, the do-it-all linebacker out of Appalachian State. Devon Hamilton, Erick's boy, interior defensive lineman out of Ohio State. Antoine Brooks Jr., another safety player for Vic Fangio's defense in Maryland out of number 163. And 214, Joshua Kelly, the running back out of UCLA. Now, guys, we're going to take just a couple more of your comments, but we do got to get moving on and getting out of here. How do you think we did? Erick, what do you think? How do you think we did?
I think this is a solid B+, A- draft. I mean, you filled out a bunch of needs that the Broncos have. They got some really good players that can contribute right away. You've got guys to give depth for the future and develop for the future. Just very well-rounded, top to bottom, just getting guys that can come in and have an impact. And we did get another Super Chat donation with the question of how does Janovich factor into the new scheme? Basically, he's going to be used on special teams. He will have a few plays for him on defense, or on offense, but I wouldn't expect him to see more than about maybe at most 10% of offensive plays, and that's being very generous. Pat Shurmur just doesn't use a scheme that has a bunch of plays that require a fullback in it. I mean, we might be able to see him a little bit as a tight end. Who knows? That might be an option that they'll go and look at, but I'm just not seeing it. I think that we're going to keep him around because he is a special teams player. So definitely a good option.
Yeah, we're not going to see Andy Janovich out of a Broncos roster, or out of the Broncos uniform for at least the duration of his contract. I mean, it's manageable, money manageable that the Broncos can work around, and just the value it brings as far as a special teams player. Now, with, as you said, Pat Shurmur doesn't necessarily value a fullback in his offense as like what we've seen over the past couple of years, obviously with Gary Kubiak and then with Bill Musgrave and everybody like that. Like, it's just not going to happen. We're probably not going to see Janovich very often unless it's like a goal line situation where they need another hammer to go and like goal to go situation, short yardage situation, stuff like that. So unfortunately, we're probably not going to see a whole lot. But I do know that John Elway has come out and said that he wants to have Janovich still involved in the offense, and he wants Pat Shurmur to get him involved as much as he can. So we're going to go through, and we've got a couple of comments coming in. Very nice draft. Tony Sahatjin coming back in, and he says B- C+ draft. Now, Tony, I'm not necessarily sure why you think that. So come back and hit us one more time, but quickly before we go. And then now another quick question here. Darnay Holmes, what do you think?
He's a guy that I would be looking at for the Broncos round 3. He was another one of those corners that one reason why I was comfortable with passing up on Jalen Johnson at that pick. Great scheme fit, reminds me a little bit of Chris Harris, very physical. Does get a little bit grabby, which is going to be something that the coaches would have to basically fix out of him, but definitely an option for the Broncos. I love his scheme fit. I mean, very Chris Holmes-like, or not very Chris Harris-like.
Okay. All right, guys. I think that's going to wrap it up for us. We're getting a little bit long. We gotta kind of get going out of here. We're running a little over an hour now. So, guys, if you like it, share this video. Share it. This is extremely fun to get all of your guys' input. Thank you all for coming out and showing massive amounts of support today. This was absolutely a blast. You guys, once again, follow the new Twitter account for the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. It is at @DVDD_pod. You guys can also follow me at Sanderson MHH, and for Erick at Erick Trickel. Notice CK in his name. Thank you guys once again for joining us on Dove Valley Deep Divers Live. Give us a bunch of comments. Come get it at us as far as how we did, how the draft panned out. If you guys agree or disagree with any of the picks or analysis, come get at us, and you know, we love to discuss football with all of our fans, especially Broncos football. It's what we do best. So once again, guys, thank you all for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers Live. Go ahead, Erick.
Just real quick, we will definitely plan on doing this again, probably closer to free agency, either just before or just afterwards. More likely just after free agency, and then one more time probably prior to the draft as well. And thank you guys again so much for joining us. And remember, going forward, we will be showing up at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So every week, every Saturday, come in and join us.
Yep, come in and join us. Once again, thank you guys for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You all stay safe, take care, and have a great day. Thank you very much.